Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The elevator chimed as it reached the 42nd floor of the gleaming skyscraper. Stepping out onto polished marble, a man in a crisp charcoal suit adjusted his red power tie and smoothed back his dark hair. The corner office beckoned, its glass walls offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. "Morning, Mr. Holloway," chirped the receptionist. "The team's waiting in the conference room." He nodded briskly, striding past without breaking his pace. Zayn Holloway, rising star of Apex Innovations, had no time for small talk. Not when quarterly reports were due and the CEO was breathing down everyone's neck about year-end projections. Pushing open the heavy oak door, he was greeted by a sea of expectant faces around the long mahogany table. PowerPoint slides flickered on the wall-mounted screen, spreadsheets and bar graphs swimming before his eyes.
"Glad you could join us, Zayn,"
rumbled Charles Benson, the silver-haired VP of Operations.
"We were just discussing the upcoming charity gala."
Zayn blinked, momentarily thrown off kilter. "Charity gala? I thought this was about the Anderson account." A ripple of uneasy laughter spread through the room. Melissa from HR cleared her throat. "That meeting's tomorrow, Zayn. Today we're finalizing plans for next month's fundraiser." Heat crept up the back of his neck. How had he mixed up the schedule? He'd been pulling 80-hour weeks, true, but this kind of slip-up was unacceptable, especially with Benson watching him like a hawk.
"Right, of course,"
Zayn said smoothly, sliding into an empty chair.
"My apologies. Please, continue."
As the marketing team droned on about catering options and floral arrangements, Zayn's mind raced. He needed to get back on top of things, fast. This charity event could be the perfect opportunity to showcase his leadership skills and prove to Benson he was ready for that corner office.
"What about our keynote speaker?"
Benson interrupted, his bushy eyebrows furrowing.
"We need someone who embodies our theme of women in leadership, someone who can really sell our commitment to diversity and inclusion."
The room fell silent. Zayn's ears perked up. This was his chance.
"I might have an idea,"
he said, leaning forward. All eyes turned to him.
"What if we showcased one of our own rising female executives? Someone who's climbed the corporate ladder here at Apex?"
Benson nodded slowly, a gleam of interest in his eyes.
"Not bad, Holloway. Who did you have in mind?"
Zayn opened his mouth, then closed it again. His mind went blank. How had he not thought this through? The harsh truth was, Apex's upper management was sorely lacking in female representation. The few women who had made it to director level were either on maternity leave or stationed overseas.
"Well,"
he stalled, tugging at his collar.
"I was thinking." "Yes?"
Benson prompted, impatience creeping into his voice. In that moment of panic, a wild idea seized Zayn. It was crazy, potentially career-ending, but it just might work.
"Valentina,"
he blurted out.
"Valentina Reyes. She's new to the company, but her track record is impressive. I think she'd be perfect for this."
Benson's eyebrows shot up.
"Valentina Reyes? I don't recall that name." "She's, very new,"
Zayn improvised.
"Headhunted from a competitor, still getting settled in, which is why you might not have met her yet. But trust me, she's exactly what we need for this event."
The room buzzed with curious whispers. Benson leaned back in his chair, a considering look on his face.
"All right, Holloway. You've piqued my interest. Set up a meeting with this Valentina. If she's as good as you say, we might have found our keynote speaker.
Zayn nodded, his heart pounding. What had he just done? As the meeting adjourned, he ducked into an empty office, loosening his tie and taking deep breaths. He had exactly 1 week to transform himself into Valentina Reyes, the fictional rising star of Apex Innovations. The next few days passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Zayn called in every favor he could, tapping contacts in theater and fashion to help craft his alter ego. A wig was procured, makeup techniques were hastily learned, and a wardrobe assembled that screamed corporate powerhouse. The night before his big debut, Zayn stood before the full-length mirror in his apartment, hardly recognizing the person staring back at him. Gone was the clean-shaven executive in a power suit. In his place stood a striking woman with cascading chestnut hair, subtle but flawless makeup, and a tailored navy dress that hugged curves he didn't know he had.
"Hello, Valentina,"
he whispered, his voice pitched higher than usual. The woman in the mirror smiled back, confidence radiating from every pore. The next morning, Zayn arrived at the office an hour early, sneaking into the executive bathroom to make his transformation. When he emerged as Valentina, stilettos clicking on the marble floor, heads turned. "Can I help you, miss?" the receptionist asked, clearly not recognizing him. "I'm here to see Mr. Benson," Zayn said in Valentina's carefully practiced voice. "Valentina Reyes!" The receptionist's eyes widened. "Oh, of course, Ms. Reyes. He's expecting you. Right this way." As they walked to Benson's office, Zayn felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. This was it, the moment of truth. Benson rose as they entered, extending his hand.
"Ms. Reyes, a pleasure to finally meet you. Zayn Holloway has told me great things."
Zayn, as Valentina, shook his hand firmly, flashing a dazzling smile. "The pleasure is all mine, Mr. Benson. I've heard wonderful things about Apex, and I'm excited to contribute to its continued success." For the next hour, Zayn drew on every ounce of his business acumen and newly acquired feminine wiles to sell Valentina as the perfect candidate for the charity gala. He spoke passionately about women's empowerment in the workplace, peppered his responses with impressive, albeit fictional, career highlights, and even managed to deflect Benson's probing questions about his background with practiced ease. By the end of the meeting, Benson was beaming. "I have to hand it to Holloway," he said, clapping Zayn on the shoulder. "He really knows how to pick 'em. You're exactly what we need for this event, Valentina. The job's yours if you want it." Zayn felt a surge of triumph. He'd done it.
"I'd be honored, Mr. Benson,"
he said, careful to keep Valentina's voice steady despite his racing heart. As he clip-clopped out of the office, Zayn allowed himself a small smile of victory. Phase 1 of his plan was complete. Now he just had to maintain the charade long enough to pull off the charity gala and secure that promotion. Little did he know, his journey as Valentina was only just beginning. The weeks leading up to the charity gala were a whirlwind of activity. Zayn found himself living a double life, balancing his regular workload with clandestine appearances as Valentina. He threw himself into preparing for the keynote speech, determined to make it a rousing success. But something unexpected began to happen. The more time Zayn spent as Valentina, the more he found himself enjoying it. There was a freedom in her persona, a confidence he'd never quite managed to achieve as himself. In meetings, Valentina's ideas were met with enthusiasm and respect. Her presence seemed to light up rooms in a way Zayn's never had. One afternoon, as Valentina was leaving a strategy session, she bumped into Emily from marketing. "Oh, Valentina!" Emily exclaimed. "I'm so glad I caught you. A few of us are going for drinks after work. Would you like to join?" Zayn hesitated. He'd never been invited to after-work drinks before, at least not by the women in the office, but the warm smile on Emily's face was impossible to resist. "I'd love to," Valentina replied. That evening, in a cozy wine bar down the street from the office, Zayn experienced a side of his coworkers he'd never seen before. The women, usually so professional and guarded at work, were open and relaxed. They shared stories of workplace challenges, swapped advice on dealing with difficult clients, and laughed over the latest office gossip. For the first time, Zayn felt truly part of a team. He found himself opening up as Valentina, sharing carefully edited stories of his own experiences. The connection he felt with these women was unlike anything he'd experienced in his years at Apex. As the night wore on and the wine flowed freely, the conversation turned to more personal matters. "So, Valentina," Emily said, leaning in conspiratorially, "any special someone in your life?" Zayn froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. But Valentina's confident persona took over. "Not at the moment," she said with a coy smile. "I'm focusing on my career right now, but who knows what the future might hold." The other women nodded approvingly. "Good for you," said Rachel from accounting. "Too often, we're expected to have it all, the high-powered career and the perfect relationship. It's refreshing to see someone prioritize their professional goals." As Zayn walked home that night, his head spinning slightly from the wine and the surreal experience, he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. He'd connected with his coworkers in a way he never had before, and it felt right. The day of the charity gala arrived in a flurry of last-minute preparations. Zayn spent hours getting ready, meticulously applying Valentina's makeup and adjusting her outfit, a stunning red gown that made heads turn as she entered the hotel ballroom. "Valentina, you look amazing!" Benson boomed, approaching with a group of investors in tow. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet our keynote speaker, Valentina Reyes.
She's the future of Apex Innovations."
As Zayn shook hands and made small talk, he felt a familiar surge of confidence. This was what he'd been working towards. This was his moment to shine. When it came time for the speech, Zayn took a deep breath and stepped up to the podium. Looking out over the sea of expectant faces, he felt a moment of panic. What if they saw through his disguise? What if he forgot his lines? But as soon as he began to speak, all doubts melted away. Valentina's voice rang out clear and strong, weaving a compelling narrative of perseverance, innovation, and leadership. The audience hung on her every word, nodding and applauding at all the right moments. As Valentina concluded her speech to thunderous applause, Zayn felt a rush of emotions he couldn't quite name. Pride, certainly, at pulling off such an ambitious deception, but also something deeper, a sense of fulfillment he'd never experienced in his own skin. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and networking. Valentina was the belle of the ball, sought after by everyone from junior executives to board members. Zayn reveled in the attention, feeling more alive than he had in years. It wasn't until the early hours of the morning, as he was removing Valentina's makeup in the solitude of his apartment, that the full weight of what he'd done hit him. He'd created an entirely new person, a person who was, in many ways, more successful and well-liked than Zayn Holloway had ever been. As he stared at his reflection, half Zayn and half Valentina, a troubling question bubbled to the surface. Which version of himself was the real one? The days following the gala brought a flurry of activity at Apex Innovations. Valentina's speech had been a resounding success, generating positive press and renewed interest from investors. Zayn found himself fielding congratulatory emails and phone calls, both as himself and as Valentina. One afternoon, as he was hurriedly changing out of Valentina's outfit in the executive bathroom, a knock came at the door. "Holloway? You in there?" Zayn's heart leapt into his throat. It was Benson. "Just a moment," he called out, frantically wiping off the last traces of lipstick and stuffing Valentina's clothes into his briefcase. He opened the door, trying to look as nonchalant as possible. "Mr. Benson, what can I do for you?" Benson eyed him curiously. "You all right, Holloway? You look a bit flushed." "Fine, sir," Zayn said quickly. "Just, fighting off a bit of a cold."
"Well, don't let it keep you down,"
Benson said.
"I wanted to congratulate you on finding Valentina. She's been a real asset to the company. In fact, I'm thinking of fast-tracking her for a senior position."
Zayn's eyes widened.
"That's wonderful news, sir."
Benson clapped him on the shoulder.
"You've got a good eye for talent, Holloway. Keep this up and you might find yourself moving up the ladder, too."
As Benson walked away, Zayn leaned against the wall, his mind reeling. A senior position for Valentina? How could he possibly maintain this charade long term? But even as panic set in, another part of him, a part that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore, felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect of spending more time as Valentina. Over the next few weeks, Zayn found himself creating more and more opportunities to bring Valentina to the office. He scheduled meetings with clients who specifically requested her presence, volunteered her for company-wide presentations, and even arranged a few chance encounters with Benson in the hallways. Each time he transformed into Valentina, it felt less like putting on a costume and more like revealing a hidden part of himself. He began to notice subtle changes in his behavior, even when he wasn't in character. His posture improved, his voice took on a more melodic quality, and he found himself paying more attention to his appearance. One day, as he was having lunch with Emily and Rachel, as Valentina, of course, Emily leaned in with a conspiratorial smile. "So, Val, spill the beans. What's your secret?" Zayn nearly choked on his salad. "My secret?" Rachel rolled her eyes. "Come on, don't play coy. How do you do it? You waltz in here, charm everyone from the mailroom to the boardroom, and now you're on the fast track to upper management. There's got to be a trick to it." For a moment, Zayn was at a loss for words. How could he explain that Valentina's success was built on an elaborate lie? But then, looking at the genuine admiration in his coworkers' eyes, he realized something. Valentina's achievements weren't just smoke and mirrors. They were the result of hard work, quick thinking, and a confidence that Zayn had always possessed, but never fully embraced. "There's no real secret," Valentina said slowly. "I just try to be the best version of myself every day, and I'm not afraid to take risks or speak up when I have something to contribute." Emily and Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "That's actually really inspiring," Emily said. "Sometimes I feel like I hold myself back, you know? Like I'm afraid to really put myself out there." "Me too," Rachel admitted. "But seeing you in action, Valentina, it makes me want to push myself harder." As the conversation continued, Zayn felt a warmth spreading through his chest. He'd started this charade for his own benefit, but now he was actually inspiring others. Valentina was making a real difference in people's lives. The realization both thrilled and terrified him. As weeks turned into months, Zayn found it increasingly difficult to separate his two identities. Valentina was no longer just a character he played. She had become a vital part of who he was. He caught himself using her mannerisms, even when out of costume, and her confident outlook began to color his approach to life's challenges. One evening, as he was working late at the office, as Zayn this time, Benson stopped by his desk. "Holloway, got a minute?" Zayn looked up, startled. "Of course, sir. What can I do for you?" Benson settled into the chair across from him, a serious expression on his face. "I wanted to talk to you about your future here at Apex." Zayn's heart began to race. This was it, the moment he'd been working towards for years. The promotion he'd dreamed of was finally within reach.
"You've been doing exemplary work lately," Benson continued. "Your ideas in the last few strategy meetings were spot on, and that presentation to the board last week knocked it out of the park." "Thank you, sir," Zayn said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've been giving it my all." Benson nodded approvingly. "It shows, which is why I've decided to recommend you for a senior management position." Zayn's breath caught in his throat. I don't know what to say, sir. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Benson said, holding up a hand. "There's a catch. The position I have in mind, it's not here at headquarters." Zayn's elation dimmed slightly. "Oh. We're expanding our operations overseas," Benson explained. "Opening a new office in London. It's a big opportunity, Holloway. You'd be overseeing the entire European division."
For a moment, Zayn was speechless. It was more than he'd ever dared hope for. A chance to prove himself on an international stage, to truly make his mark in the company. But then, unbidden, an image of Valentina flashed through his mind. If he took this job, what would happen to her? Would she simply disappear? "This is quite an opportunity," Zayn said slowly. "How soon would I need to decide?" "I'll need an answer by the end of the week," Benson said, standing up. "Think it over, Holloway. This could be the making of your career." As Benson walked away, Zayn slumped in his chair, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He should have been ecstatic. This was everything he'd ever wanted, wasn't it? But the thought of leaving behind the life he'd built as Valentina, the friendships, the respect, the sense of belonging, filled him with an unexpected sense of loss. For the next few days, Zayn grappled with his decision. He made pro-con lists, sought advice from trusted friends, careful to frame it as a hypothetical scenario, and spent sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, trying to envision his future. On the morning he was due to give Benson his answer, Zayn found himself standing in front of his bathroom mirror, Valentina's wig in his hands. He looked at his reflection, the face he'd known all his life, and then slowly put on the wig, watching as Valentina emerged. In that moment, looking at the two sides of himself side by side, Zayn finally understood what he needed to do. He arrived at the office early, his heart pounding, but his resolve firm. Benson was already at his desk, poring over some reports. "Ah, Holloway," he said, looking up. "I take it you've made your decision?" Zayn took a deep breath. "I have, sir, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to decline the position in London." Benson's eyebrows shot up. "I see. May I ask why?" "Because," Zayn said, straightening his shoulders, "I have something I need to tell you. Something that might change how you see me, but something I can't keep hidden any longer." And there, in the early morning light of Benson's office, Zayn began to explain. He told Benson about the charity gala, about creating Valentina out of desperation and ambition. He talked about how the character had taken on a life of her own, how she had become more than just a disguise. As he spoke, Zayn expected to see shock, anger, or disgust on Benson's face, but to his surprise, the older man's expression remained thoughtful, even as Zayn's tale reached its conclusion. When Zayn finally fell silent, Benson leaned back in his chair, regarding him with an unreadable expression.
"Well, Holloway," he said at last, "I have to say, in all my years in business, I've never encountered a situation quite like this."
Zayn swallowed hard.
"I understand if you want my resignation, sir. What I did was unorthodox, certainly,"
Benson interrupted.
"Potentially problematic from an HR standpoint? Absolutely, but also rather brilliant in its own way."
Zayn blinked, unable to believe what he was hearing.
"Sir?"
Benson stood up, pacing behind his desk.
"You saw a need in the company and filled it. You took a risk, a huge risk, and it paid off. Not just for you, but for Apex as a whole. Valentina has brought fresh ideas and energy to this office. She's inspired other employees, improved morale, and helped land us several major accounts."
He stopped, fixing Zayn with a penetrating stare.
"The question is, Holloway, or should I say, Valentina, where do we go from here?"
Zayn took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders.
"Sir, I've done a lot of soul-searching these past few months,
and I've realized that Valentina isn't just a character I play. She's a part of me, a part I've kept hidden for too long. I'd like the opportunity to continue working here at Apex, but as my true self." Benson was quiet for a long moment, his brow furrowed in thought. Finally, he nodded.
"It won't be easy. There will be challenges, legal, social, professional. But if you're committed to this path, Apex will support you. We pride ourselves on being a progressive company, after all."
Relief and gratitude washed over Zayn.
"Thank you, sir. You have no idea what this means to me." "Don't thank me yet,"
Benson said, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth.
"You've got a lot of explaining to do to your coworkers, and I expect to see the same level of excellence from you going forward, regardless of how you choose to present yourself." "Of course, sir,"
Zayn said, feeling lighter than he had in months.
"You can count on me."
As he left Benson's office, Zayn felt as though a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The road ahead would be challenging, no doubt. There would be difficult conversations, awkward moments, and undoubtedly some pushback. But for the first time in his life, Zayn felt truly, authentically himself. He had started this journey as a means to an end, a way to climb the corporate ladder. But somewhere along the way, it had become about so much more than that. It had become about self-discovery, acceptance, and the courage to live as one's true self. As he walked to his desk, Zayn, or perhaps Valentina, or perhaps some beautiful combination of the two, smiled. The future was uncertain, but it was full of possibility, and that, after all, was what truly mattered.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!